Good evening, I'm Catherine Bliss.
And I'm David Curley. How safe and sanitary are Chicago restaurants? Tonight we begin a special News 2 Chicago investigation which tells you why you should eat, drink, and be wary when you dine at some Chicago restaurants. We have found evidence that some restaurants routinely violate the most basic health and safety regulations in the city. Some are allowed to operate despite repeated inspection failures, and some restaurants don't even get inspected when they should be. Pam Zekman is here with her special investigation, which has been going on, as we've said, for a number of months.
David, Catherine, for the past 6 months, we worked undercover in Chicago restaurants as dishwashers and waiters, using hidden cameras to help document what we saw. All the restaurants we worked in had a history of repeatedly failing city health inspections. Here's a preview of what we found. They are some of the city's most popular restaurants. But as you sip from a glass and eat off a plate, you don't know what's going on in the kitchen. How carefully are the dishes washed and the food prepared?
We walk in there with blind faith and literally put our health and safety and our very lives in the hands of these kitchen employees.
When we worked undercover in restaurants, we learned you better be wary of cooks who eat, lick their fingers, and then rub their germs on the customer's plate. Dishwashers that don't sanitize the dishes, silverware that doesn't get clean. Restaurants that leave raw and cooked food out for hours at room temperature, the ideal conditions for dangerous bacteria to grow. And restaurants that are rat and roach infested, where some customers have even complained about finding roaches in their food. A food safety consultant who viewed our videotapes says there's no excuse for the conditions we found.
This is not rocket science to keep the cockroaches and the rats out of the restaurant and to serve hot food hot and cold food cold. That is a reasonably simple thing to do.
Reasonably simple, but apparently difficult for many Chicago restaurants. According to these city inspection reports we obtained under the Freedom of Information Act and our computer analysis of those reports. We found 27% of the restaurants failed at least one inspection last year. 10% failed twice. Many have failed over and over again and are still open. Those that are closed reopen again, only to be found with the same violations. Violations that result in fines of a few $100s. Not an effective deterrent, according to the author of a national survey on restaurant inspections.
Food poisoning is estimated to cost American consumers billions of dollars every year. So it is not enough to charge a restaurant found to be violating these important standards just a couple $100.
Another problem, although the FDA and the state recommend that restaurants get inspected at least twice a year, we found that in 1997, hundreds of Chicago restaurants only got inspected once or got no inspection at all. And when customers complained they got sick or saw unsanitary conditions in a restaurant, the city sometimes takes days, weeks, even a month to respond.
You have a very badly broken food inspection program in the city of Chicago. All we can hope is that this television show gets somebody in the city to oversee what's going on.
For the next week, we'll take you inside the kitchens of some of the city's most popular restaurants. Tomorrow night at 10, a closer look at how some workers prepare food after putting their hands in their mouths. One cook spit in his hand, then went back to preparing food. Watermelon he later scraped off the dirty floor and put on a restaurant buffet. That's tomorrow night at 10. Eat, drink, and be wary.
Foodborne illness causes millions of people to get sick and thousands of people to die every year. This summer's outbreak at Iwan's in Orland Park was one of the largest ever reported. 6,000 people got sick from food poisoning. It focused attention on just how safe or unsafe restaurants are. Now a News 2 Chicago investigation has found kitchen workers in some Chicago restaurants violating the most basic rules on food safety, violations that can make you sick. In these restaurants, you can eat, drink, but you better be wary. Pam Zekman's here to tell us why. Pam.
Linda Lester, improper food handling is one of the leading causes of foodborne illness. And during our 6-month undercover investigation, we videotaped food being mishandled day after day by restaurant kitchen workers. In restaurant kitchens all over the city, we saw employees spit in their hands, eat food, lick their fingers, then go back to preparing meals, spreading their germs on every plate they touch. Nasty habits that outraged food safety experts we consulted.
We have never, ever in the food world wanted the employees spit in the customer's food. And here we are in 1998 in Chicago, blatantly allowing that to happen.
To help prevent it, health codes prohibit restaurant employees from eating in the kitchen because when kitchens get busy, they may not take the time to wash their hands as they're required to do after they eat or touch anything that's contaminated. Gladys's Luncheonette has one of the busiest kitchens in Chicago. It's recommended in the Zagat Restaurant Guide for its super soul food. But during 8 inspections in the last 3 years, the restaurant got a failing grade for unsanitary conditions, in part because inspectors often found no soap or towels at the hand-washing sink as required by the city code. And there was no soap in the dispenser when our researcher worked there. The staff sure needs it. They constantly had their hands in their mouths, then in the customer's food. This cook used his fingers to flip greens into a dish. The pie is finger-licking good to this waitress. This cook adds her personal touch, wiping the edge of each plate with her finger, licking it, and then running the same finger on the next plate. We showed the tape to a food safety consultant.
So this means every plate gets her personal spit all over the edge of the plate.
What a difference it makes when the restaurant is expecting a television crew, as they were when we arrived 2 weeks ago. Everyone was wearing protective plastic gloves, as the health code recommends, some struggling to get them on. Remember this guy now using gloved hands? He was barehanded before. The manager says the gloves are required.
They're required, and besides, it's good hygiene.
And he says the staff are never allowed to eat in the kitchen. We have pictures of this gentleman and I think this lady eating in the kitchen, licking their fingers, then touching customer plates.
You do have pictures of them? You came in here and actually filmed them? That I couldn't explain. If anybody did that and I found them, they wouldn't be working here, that's for sure.
Leona's Pizzeria on Taylor Street has flunked 7 inspections since 1996. One inspector saw employees eating while slicing lemons and ordered it to stop. But our undercover researcher saw the help eat constantly in the kitchen as they worked.
For instance, right here, she's eating a sandwich. She doesn't clean her hands after she eats the sandwich. Then she goes back to prepare salads. And she's
barehanded.
Barehanded.
The manager says it's not allowed, and neither is this. A busboy grabbing a bite off the buffet table, and then he comes back for more.
If I was to see that, I would have to let the person go because that's a definite no-no.
Here's a no-no for McDonald's. At this franchise at Foster and Sheridan, we saw a supervisor eating on the job, despite a corporate rule that prohibits it.
She would always grab into the bin where this food is for the customers, and she would grab the chicken, eat it, lick her fingers, and then maybe 15 minutes later, she would go back and prepare someone's food.
Sometimes she washed her hands and sometimes she didn't, like this time when she walked right past the hand-washing sink to help out in the cooking area. And she ate in front of the employees she's supposed to supervise. So it's no wonder we saw some of them following her bad example. The owner wouldn't talk on camera, but says he'll reprimand the employees. His franchise has been reprimanded by the health department in the 6 inspections it's failed since 1996 for unsanitary conditions. Conditions noted by a customer who complained of seeing an employee wiping her hands on her nose, then handling food. At the Soul Queen restaurant on the south side, we found the dispenser at the hand-washing sink never had soap in it, as required by the city, nor did the employees' washroom in the basement. And the cooks were always eating with their hands. Pastry crust grabbed from the cobbler pan was a favorite snack.
And so he's contaminated that pan and putting his hands into it. And now here he comes and he's eating, contaminating his hands again.
I showed the owner of the restaurant our videotape.
Yeah, boy, I didn't know that the soul food was that good to the other actors there. He does eat a lot, doesn't he?
Is he supposed to be doing that?
Of course not.
Our undercover researchers saw cooks using bare hands to mix food like macaroni and cheese.
I asked, shouldn't we be using a paddle or some kind of stir to mix the food up? And the reply was, well, this is how we do it here.
And they used their bare hands to push muffin batter from one container to another. Worst of all, another researcher caught the cook spitting watermelon seeds into his hands as he ate and sliced melon for the buffet.
He should have washed his hands, I agree.
Then some slices fell on the filthy floor.
He just rinsed off all the pieces he dropped on the floor. They're on a tray and they'll go out to the buffet. It was pretty amazing.
What should be done when it falls on the floor?
Thrown in the garbage can.
The Soul Queen has flunked 16 health inspections in the last 3 years. In the reports, inspectors told Anglin her employees should have no direct hand contact with ready-to-eat food, use spoons, tongs, proper hand washing, and ready-to-wear gloves. She claims a lot of the violations are trivial.
I don't sweat the little stuff. I just try and get the job done.
As to our undercover findings,
My, oh my, you show me I have dozen violations that I was unaware of. Seriously. He's taking that.
an attorney for Leonis says the family-owned chain has worked hard to improve food safety and hired their own expert to routinely spot check operations. In a letter, McDonald's regional vice president thanked us for our concerns about the franchise, said they are taken very seriously, and that any necessary corrective action will be taken immediately. He said McDonald's has a history of providing the highest levels of quality service and cleanliness.
It costs billions of dollars a year to treat foodborne illnesses, and many of those illnesses could be prevented if restaurants kept hot food hot and cold food cold. It sounds like a simple proposition, but a News 2 Chicago undercover investigation has found that some Chicago restaurants don't follow the most basic safeguards to prevent the food you eat from getting contaminated. That's why all this week we are saying eat, drink, and be wary. Pam Zeckman joins us now with her continuing investigation. Pam.
Linda Lester, the basic safeguard is temperature control. Experts say allowing food to stay out too long at room temperature is a major cause of foodborne illnesses. But the violations are so common, we even saw them at popular restaurants when we tagged along with city inspectors for a surprise visit.
Here's my problem.
The problem is the blackened fish and chicken a city inspector found at 11 a.m. at the Wishbone restaurant on Grand.
Your chicken is 100 degrees there.
The longer it sits out at that temperature, the more dangerous it becomes.
You've got a chance of, messing that product up real good.
Messing it up with bacteria that multiplies if food is not stored at temperatures below 40 degrees or above 140 degrees.
This isn't hollandaise sauce, is it?
Yeah, it is.
It is?
Yeah.
Oh.
Hollandaise sauce made with undercooked eggs can go bad quickly when he finds out that it was made 3 hours ago.
Okay, now it's garbage now.
That day, the restaurant passed inspection after the owner agreed to make changes in procedures and dumped the hollandaise sauce.
It's a big problem, though, for people getting sick to the eggs.
Since that inspection last March, Wishbone replaced its chief cook. So this inspection that we went along on was valuable to the restaurant.
It was a good thing for us. It really was. It was a wake-up call.
Now all kitchen staff must take food preparation classes, log the time food is taken out of the oven, and check its temperature.
All my guys got thermometers. There's no excuses. I'm like, you take out your temperature, put it in there, it better be right.
Experts debate just how long food can sit out at room temperature before it's unsafe to eat. But those we consulted agree that after 4 hours, it's in the danger zone. Here at the Soul Queen restaurant, the buffet looks good, but the food may be bad. When our researchers worked undercover, we found out some of those dishes sit in the kitchen at room temperature for many hours.
So I was there when the meat was put out at, say, 12 o'clock, and it would stay there, until 4 or 5 whenever I left.
And our second researcher found dishes of raw chicken and fish and cooked ribs, dressing, and chicken sitting out on the counter from the time he arrived at around 3:30 until after 9:40 p.m., more than 6 hours later. We showed the videotapes to a food safety expert.
That is absolutely the worst thing in the world that a restaurant can do.
As some of the food was needed, the cook heated it up.
There are a number of bacteria that can grow that survive the cooking process.
When we made a surprise inspection, the owner of Soul Queen showed us the kitchen where we saw signs of the same violations. Raw food sitting out in the kitchen. Aren't you supposed to keep this refrigerated?
He's putting ice on that. So, oh yes, oh yes.
How long has that been out like that at room temperature?
2 minutes. 2 or 3 minutes, yes.
And there were those trays of cooked food. We've had people tell us that at this restaurant, these trays sit out for hours and hours and hours at room temperature.
No, we don't leave ours out. We don't leave ours out that long, no.
But Anglin has failed 16 city inspections in the last 3 years. Inspectors have repeatedly found temperature violations, and last year ordered Anglin to destroy ribs, chicken, fish, 295 pounds of food altogether. Do you remember when they came in and had asked you to destroy food?
I can't remember what happened last week. I've had my place closed, I've had it reopened, and as I said, I just keep on going, you know. So like Old Man River, I just keep on moving. Whatever you say needs to be done, I do it.
Maggiano's, one of the city's most popular restaurants, has had repeated problems keeping food at safe temperatures. After 3 customers complained they became ill with salmonella in 1995, Maggiano's was inspected and had to dump spoiled food, including sausage mix, Caesar dressing, and 37 portions of linguine, a total of 93 pounds of food. Then in 1996, 6 more people complained that they became ill, followed by 10 more in 1997. After both complaints, once again, inspectors found broth, sauces, and pasta at inadequate holding temperatures.
People are at real risk to eat food in a restaurant with this kind of food control.
Maggiano's would not show us their kitchen now, but tell us that since then, they've upgraded their refrigeration unit, require food safety classes for their staff, hired a safety manager, and 2 weeks ago, passed their city inspection. When we went undercover at Gladys's luncheonette, we saw food sitting out for hours at room temperature, even though the restaurant has been repeatedly cited for temperature violations. This May, an inspector said the restaurant must provide cooks with thermometers to check food temperatures. But when we toured the kitchen recently in a prearranged inspection, the cooks still had no thermometers. You have a thermometer?
Yeah, I have to get you one.
It took the manager a few minutes to find one, but the food tested okay. With thermometers hard to come by, our undercover camera caught this waitress using a handy substitute.
Oh, beautiful. No thermometer, so we put our fingers in the food to make it sure it's hot.
She sticks her finger right in the food. Is that a way to test the temperature of the food?
Not in any place I've been to, not in any place I've worked in, not even at Gladys's. Oh, we're not perfect. Don't get me wrong now. I mean, no restaurant can come out and say they're perfect. But, you know we do our best.
Well, you go out to eat and you find a bug in your food or your drink. Sounds awful, but it's happened to customers who have dined at some of the city's best-known restaurants. Restaurants where you can eat and drink, but you better be wary of what might be in your food. Pam Zechman's been investigating Chicago restaurants for 6 months, and Pam, a dirty problem here.
Yes, there is. Lester and Linda, experts say that roaches carry disease and are signs of a dirty kitchen. But we found restaurants here with long histories of serious roach problems. Imagine finding a roach baked into your pizza, blended into your milkshake, or mixed into your peach cobbler. That's what disgusted customers say they found at restaurants across the city. Gino's on Rush Street boasts about its world-famous Chicago pizza. But some customers have complained their pizzas came with roaches cooked inside, or they found roaches on their tables and in the Parmesan cheese. What was your reaction?
Shocked. It's something I wouldn't expect to see in any restaurant, especially on the Gold Coast.
Gino's has failed 9 inspections over the last 3 years and been shut down 4 times, but each time it's reopened after the owner made corrections. Time after time, inspection reports show Gino's roach problem reappeared, among other violations. Giuseppe and Sarah, the owner of Gino's, doesn't want to talk about it. Your restaurant has failed so many inspections. Why don't you clean it up?
Listen, I don't have enough time with you. Okay, stay away from my food.
The Soul Queen restaurant attracts customers with its buffet, but many have complained about finding roaches in the food.
I was stunned. I was actually horrified, you know, that they're just marching up and down the buffet table.
When our undercover researcher worked at the Soul Queen, he saw this roach marching up the wall, headed for a pan of turkey wings in the kitchen. You see them there a lot?
Yeah.
Live
I saw
roaches in the kitchen.
Live, running, living, breathing, crawling roaches. Absolutely.
That is a terrible, filthy thing.
We showed the tape to an expert in food safety.
Who in the world wants to eat cockroaches in their food?
Not John Palmer. He hasn't been back since a waitress shrugged off his complaint about those roaches on the buffet.
And she said, oh yeah, she said, don't worry, they won't get on the food because the food is hot.
But others have complained they found roaches in their ribs, their greens, and their peach cobbler. Complaints the owner says are often unjustified.
I disagree that there have been consistent complaints from customers that have found insects of any kind in their food.
The health department has also repeatedly found evidence of roaches, but Anglin says she exterminates regularly.
No, I don't want customers getting anything but the very best quality soul food, because this is what I promote, quality soul food for all souls.
Here at Gladys's Luncheonette, customers have also complained about roaches, but the manager says it hasn't been a problem for the past year. You haven't seen any roaches? None at all.
No.
But what about these guys? Stuck in the Roach Motel, our undercover researcher left at Gladys's for several days. A bug expert estimates there are more than 100 of them, an alarming number, he says, for any restaurant.
Because cockroaches harbor various pathogenic organisms, including salmonella.
Here at a McDonald's franchise at Sheridan and Foster, customers have complained to the city about finding roaches in soup and in a milkshake. City inspectors have also found roaches in front of the milkshake machine in 1997, and the owner was instructed to get rid of live roaches in the front serving area, again this year. But employees warned our researcher about the continued roach problem when he worked there.
There's roaches everywhere in here. She said, that's why I don't eat no roaches, that's why I don't eat the ice cream, because there's roaches inside the machine.
When he looked,
I noticed 2 dead roaches.
Inside the machine?
Inside the machine where the motor is, right?
And he killed roaches he found in the washroom. The franchise owner declined to be interviewed on camera, but says his roach problem was taken care of long ago. But just 2 weeks ago, city inspectors once again found live and dead roaches in the front serving area and rear storage cabinets. McDonald's corporate officials also declined an on-camera interview, but in this letter, the regional vice president thanked News 2 for expressing concerns about the franchise, said they're taken seriously, and any necessary corrective action will be taken. He said McDonald's has a history of quality service and cleanliness. We want to point out that Gino's on Rush is not related to Gino's East on Superior. They have different owners.
When you dine out, you trust that the restaurant gives you clean dishes and silverware, but is that always what you're getting? A 6-month investigation by News 2 Chicago has found that you can eat and drink, but in some restaurants you have to be wary about whether or not the dishes have, in fact, been washed and sanitized. Pam Zeckman's here to tell us what she found on this. Pam.
Linda Lester, there are some tough standards restaurants must meet to be sure the dishes we eat off are clean. But while working undercover in some Chicago restaurants, we discovered all those germs aren't coming out in the wash. Dirty dishes piled up on the floor and stacked on the counters. An unwashed mess of pots and pans from a busy lunch at Leona's restaurant on Taylor Street. When we paid a surprise visit to the restaurant a few weeks ago, the manager warned us about his crisis of the day.
The main problem is the dishwasher didn't show up this morning. Usually this never happens.
That's not true. This scene has happened time and time again when I worked at Leona's.
As a waiter, our undercover researcher saw dirty dishes backed up in the kitchen for an hour or more, so the food got encrusted and became harder and harder to rinse off. Getting the silverware clean seemed to be a constant problem. So day after day, our undercover researcher picked up supposedly clean silverware to be rolled into napkins and placed on tables. Then noticed dirty knives and forks, some still covered with crud. He set them aside to be washed again. Other waiters developed their own methods of cleaning the silverware, wiping it on a tablecloth or whatever else they could find. A dirty knife gets a close examination and is wiped off on this waiter's shirt.
If they felt it was clean enough, then they would just roll it up in the silverware.
I told the manager of Leona's what we found and documented with our undercover camera. the waitstaff having to wipe off the silverware on their clothes, on napkins, on tablecloths out there because it came out dirty.
Is that right? Well, if I see something like that, of course, I'm going to stop it and show them the proper way.
Health codes require that when dishes are washed, restaurants use sanitizers and water that's hot enough to kill all the germs left on one customer's plate so they don't spread to another. Here at the Soul Queen restaurant, city inspectors found serious problems with the dishwasher last March. It was not reaching high enough temperatures to sanitize the dishes. The inspector ordered the owner, Helen Anglin, not to use the dish machine until it's repaired. In the meantime, the city said her staff should wash dishes by hand, making sure to sanitize them in this sink. But in July, our researcher got a job as a dishwasher, and there was a problem.
It's difficult when there's no sanitizer.
Then, during a busy lunch hour, the restaurant ran out of clean silverware.
The owner had come back into the kitchen area and instructed me to just rinse the silverware, not to wash it, not to sanitize it, just rinse.
The owner denied it.
I don't do anything except try to adhere to the code, put God first, and work every day.
When our second researcher worked at Soul Queen, he was told to use the defective dishwasher. But this cook apparently knew it wasn't working right. Look how he scrubs a supposedly clean glass before using it himself.
He didn't trust that it was clean at all. For his glass, it was going to be perfect. It was going to be clean for him.
When we made a surprise visit to the Soul Queen, the owner said the dishwasher works. I read some inspection reports that said that you weren't to use the dishwasher. You were supposed to use the three-compartment sink until you got it fixed.
Well, we do, and we did.
No, she didn't. After we inquired, city inspectors returned and confirmed the dishwasher had not been fixed. Anglin was ordered to stop using it once again.
Thank you very much.
Why was the staff using the dishwasher when you were told not to use the dishwasher?
You know, you end up with the dishwasher. Whatever it is that I'm supposed to do that is not in compliance, consider it done.
Toward that end, the owner of the Soul Queen says she spent thousands of dollars on improvements. An attorney for Leonis says the owners have hired a food safety consultant and implemented procedures to ensure its restaurants are safe to eat in.
Hundreds of Chicago restaurants may not be getting inspected each year because the city may not have enough inspectors. It's one more reason why you can eat and drink, but better be wary when you eat at a Chicago restaurant. Pam Zeckman's been investigating this story for 6 months. Pam.
Lester and Linda, restaurants are supposed to be inspected at least twice a year, and those inspections are needed to educate restaurant owners on potential hazards and protect the public. We tagged along to watch just how thorough those inspections can be.
This is a no-no for sure.
It's a dirty ice machine spotted by a city inspector at the Breakfast Club, and he wants it cleaned immediately.
Ice is food, and ice is going into every drink that's downstairs, basically.
In the kitchen, he takes temperatures to make sure food is cold or hot enough to prevent bacteria from growing.
Good, 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 good.
But down in the basement, he spots something bad. Rat droppings, lots of them.
13, 14, 15, 16. See him? See him?
He tells the restaurant manager to get more traps.
So I get in here, and it's just loaded. I stopped clowning after 25 over here.
Since then, re-inspections have found the rodent problem under control, and the Breakfast Club has passed its inspections. But what about all the restaurants the city doesn't inspect? The Food and Drug Administration and the State Health Department say restaurants should be inspected at least twice each year. But this state audit we obtained indicates that in Chicago, those standards are not being met. The state's random sample of 149 restaurant locations found 25% only got inspected once in 1996, and 17% got no inspections. A surprise to the authors of a national survey that concluded Chicago's inspection program looked good compared to other cities, in part because Chicago claimed every restaurant gets inspected twice a year.
So I'm really quite surprised to find your data that shows that perhaps they weren't telling us the whole truth.
The city's inspection record has improved, the health commissioner says. Her own random check of 53 locations shows 89% got 2 inspections this year.
I mean, that's the state standard, that's our standard, and that's what we intend to fulfill.
How many had none?
None had none.
But what about Lowry's Prime Rib, a busy Northside restaurant that went for more than a year without an inspection, until we asked about it. When the city did check, an inspector found coolers weren't keeping food cold enough to prevent spoiling. Dishwashers weren't getting hot enough to sanitize the dishes, all violations of the city code. An inspection a week later found everything now repaired. We also found that Cafe Bernard, a popular restaurant in Old Town, hadn't been inspected since 1996 for more than 2 years.
That is a deficiency. There's no question about it.
Why did that happen?
Our people, it's not a perfect world. We're not perfect. So there's going to be deficiencies.
Some restaurants, like the Cactus Bar and Grill on Rush Street, apparently haven't gotten yearly inspections because they aren't open during inspectors' regular workday hours. In 1997, inspectors showed up on 2 mornings in March and wrote they were unable to gain entry. They never went back. Last week, after we inquired about it, an inspector was dispatched at 6 p.m. when the bar opens. The kitchen was closed for cleaning, but will now be closed longer because the inspector found all kinds of violations that need correction. The manager declined to comment.
He's not very happy, but that's a fact of life. We're not to make people happy, we're to get the job done.
But does the city have enough inspectors to inspect 9,500 restaurants twice a year? It's hard to get a straight answer from the health department. First, we were told 35 inspectors were on the street, then 56, the number budgeted. As we sit here today, how many inspectors do you have on the street, 35 or 56?
Oh, I'd say somewhere in the middle.
The state audit also found that 30% of those restaurants that had serious violations requiring follow-up inspections never got re-inspected.
Unless the city of Chicago is promptly following up on violations, then the restaurants really have no incentive to correct them.
A spokesman for Lowry's Restaurant says they don't rely on city inspectors to make sure their kitchens are clean. They have regular mock inspections that are tougher than the city's.
You go to a Chicago restaurant and you see something revolting, or you go home and you get sick from the food you ate. What happens when you file a complaint with the Chicago Health Department? A News 2 Chicago investigation has found it may take the city weeks to respond. It's another reason why you can eat, drink, but you better be wary at some Chicago restaurants. Pam Zekman is here to tell you why. Pam?
David, Catherine, the city says the number of food poisoning complaints here is low, a sign that the health department is doing a good job. But experts say only 10% of the cases ever get reported. And when complaints are made, we found that sometimes the city responds far too late to substantiate a case. Even at the finest restaurants, customers can get sick from any number of food handling violations, like the ones we saw while working undercover. Food left out at room temperature for hours, the ideal conditions for bacteria to grow. Food handlers who lick their fingers, wipe their spit on the customer's plate, and never wash their hands. Experts say these are among the leading causes of foodborne illness.
One food handling error can make hundreds of people sick.
The city health department says the number of foodborne illness complaints in Chicago has gone down from 162 in 1995 to 105 in 1996, with only 6 reported to the state as actual outbreaks, incidents in which 2 or more people got sick.
But we have a very good record in terms of very few foodborne illnesses. So we are doing our job in terms of safety in our restaurants.
But our investigation found the city can't justify that claim because all too often its inspectors don't respond to complaints of foodborne illness until days, sometimes weeks after they're made. By then, it can be too late to gather evidence that could prove a case.
If you're going to get a food sample, you have to do it really within 24 hours.
When a customer at the Nanjing restaurant complained he got very sick after eating a pot sticker, it took the city a week to respond. When another customer at Ronnie's Steakhouse purchased chicken and complained he became ill, it took the city 2 weeks to respond. And after a customer complained about getting ill at Carson's Ribs, it took the city a month to respond. Not surprisingly, inspectors found the complaints unjustified, in part because the original food was not available when they finally got to the restaurants. And to declare then that the complaint was unjustified?
Absolutely fallacious. No, you can't say that. You have no idea, because looking at the restaurant a month later tells you nothing about what happened that day.
The city's health commissioner agrees.
I think that we let down in those if it took that long. I'm not going to defend that.
Experts say that what happened here at Maggiano's is also indefensible. In 1995, 3 customers reported they got sick within 1 or 2 days after eating here. Tests confirmed they had 3 different strains of salmonella. One woman sued, charging Maggiano's with negligence for having unsanitary conditions and improper food handling procedures that led to her hospitalization for salmonella. Maggiano's denied the charges, but settled the case for $15,000. The most interesting thing to come out of that lawsuit was this internal health department memo describing what the city did here at Maggiano's in response to those salmonella complaints. Memos like this are not usually released to the media, and it's no wonder. After checking out the kitchen, an inspector wrote, "We were alarmed to find soup, sauces, pasta, and vegetables sitting out at room temperature. Massive amounts of food which had been abused, and no one could tell us for how long." He felt the restaurant should stop operating so they could separate the spoiled food from the good, but he wrote that the managers protested vigorously. After explaining that customers could get sick, he says Maggiano's finally agreed to close temporarily, but only after the lunch hour at 2 p.m.
That restaurant should have been closed on the spot, because leaving it open jeopardized the health of everyone who ate that lunch.
And it was closed, but they allowed this 2-hour thing, which I don't think should have happened.
Then in 1996, another incident. After eating at Maggiano's, 6 people complained they got sick. Another inspection found cooked lasagna at inadequate holding temperatures and food not protected during storage. And in 1997, after eating at Maggiano's, 10 people complained they got sick. For the 3rd year in a row, city inspectors found temperature control problems, especially with broths and pastas. The lab reports on samples taken showed high levels of E. coli.
The fault really here lies with the city for having not insisted that the restaurant demonstrate a self-control program that was adequate to prevent any further occurrence of food abuse.
Maggiano's officials declined to be interviewed for this report, but in a written statement, the company says that since then, they've upgraded refrigeration units, require food safety classes for kitchen staff, and hired a safety manager, and the restaurant passed its most recent inspection. The owner of Carson's Ribs says they've never had a bona fide food poisoning case, and they've made continual improvements with new refrigeration units and food safety classes for their employees.
They are restaurants with long histories of health code violations, records you'll never see in any restaurant guides. In some, the health risks are so high they've been closed only to reopen again and fall back into the same bad practices. That's why you can eat, drink, but better be wary about where you eat. Tonight, Pam Zekman is here to tell us all why. Pam.
Catherine and David, this year the City Health Department has shut down 40 restaurants, but only 10 remained closed. It's a pattern that happens over and over again in some restaurants because the owners don't seem to learn from their past mistakes. Gino's Pizzeria here on Rush Street advertises its world-famous Chicago pizza, but it has one of the worst health inspection histories in the city. Over the years, customers have complained about the restaurant's filthy conditions, reporting to the city that it's infested with rats and roaches. Some ordering Gino's world-famous pizza complained they found roaches baked inside, and inside the Parmesan cheese at their table.
Not pepper, not speckles, a dead roach.
What was your reaction?
Shocked. Shocked.
Like the others, she complained to the city health department. What did you expect them to do?
Well, I expected them to shut them down.
Gino's was shut down back in 1994, the first of 4 closures ordered by the city after inspectors found rats inside. Each time, the owner, Giuseppe and Sarah, reopened after correcting violations. And every year, inspectors found the same health violations. In 1996, rodent droppings and roaches, poor hygiene by food handlers, food surfaces that needed cleaning, food kept at improper temperatures. In 1997, more inspectors found live roaches by the dishwashing machine and in the dining room, rodent infestation in the food preparation area, no soap at the employee hand-washing sink, kitchen equipment that was not clean. Insera has been issued citations that resulted in fines of just a few $100s. Not a deterrent, food safety experts say.
Now, if you did like OSHA and you went and got $5,000 or $10,000 from them, now they wouldn't mess up.
The third license suspension came this year on March 30th, when once again inspectors found live roaches in the food preparation area, rodent feces in the basement, and food stored on the floor, among other violations. Then 5 months later, another city agency, the Department of Consumer Services, found another laundry list of the same violations. And Gino's was closed again, but it's open now. After so many times...
You should lose your license permanently in the city of Chicago to be allowed to operate a restaurant.
So the question is why? Why are they still open? Why are they continuing to be a health risk to people?
I put that question to the city health commissioner.
I think there are times, because of our philosophy of education and correction, that we do keep going back, train, retrain, and hope they get it straight. But you might say maybe we were too tolerant, but we keep hoping that with help, that manager will get it right.
Well, and Sarah, he's not saying, your restaurant has failed so many inspections, why don't you clean it up?
Listen, another time with you. Okay, stay away from my place.
Fines have made no difference to this guy. Closing him up has made no difference. Does something more need to be done with the repeat violators that violate the code in a serious way?
You know, I think I'd be willing to say that maybe we need to look more closely at that.
Our computer analysis of health department records shows that about 27% of the city's restaurants failed more than one inspection in 1997. 10% failed 2 or more inspections, and all too many repeatedly failed to comply with city health codes. Like the Nanjing restaurant on the north side, records show it's failed 16 inspections since 1995 and had its license suspended twice. The owner says he's corrected the unsanitary conditions, improper food temperatures, rodent and roach infestations, and plans to keep it that way. And the owner of the Soul Queen restaurant says her 16 failed inspections are just part of being in the restaurant business.
I know that I certainly would not do anything that would cause any foodborne illness or any type of spoilage of food and then pass it on to my customer.
But when we worked undercover at Soul Queen, our researcher found raw and cooked food left out for hours, a leading cause of foodborne illness. Would you want to eat in that restaurant with food that has been out for 5-6 hours at room temperature?
No, and it shouldn't have been.
In 1997, the city even had Soul Queen destroy 295 pounds of food after finding it out at room temperature. I think she'd learn a lesson from that.
Yeah, so you would, yes.
How many
Going
chances
back
do
in
you
there.
get before somebody says enough already?
Right.
That's my question.
Yeah. And
Do we have a standard for that in the Chicago Board of Health?
I don't know that.
Do we need it?
I'm not convinced of that at this point, but again, I think what you're saying makes me I'll take some time to rethink that.
While she's thinking about it, there are some things the city could do to inform all of us about what kind of a track record a restaurant has. We'll be reporting on what other cities have done tomorrow night at 10.
All topping our news at 10, the city of Chicago taking action tonight to make the restaurants you eat at safer. In our News 2 Chicago investigation, Eat, Drink, and Be Wary, you saw what really goes on behind the scenes in some Chicago restaurants. Tonight, the city has shut down one of them. The sign on the window at Gladys's Luncheonette means they're temporarily out of business. And tonight, the mayor and 2 aldermen say they're ready to crack down on others that are not living up to code.
Pam Zachman spent 6 months on the restaurant investigation, and Pam, it looks like they're not wasting any time.
No, they're not. Catherine and Lester, tomorrow in the City Council, 2 aldermen will introduce new ordinances to crack down on restaurants that repeatedly violate health codes and beef up the information customers get on those violations, like the violations we saw at a popular South Side restaurant recommended in the Zaggett's Food Guide for its super soul food. At Gladys's Luncheonette, we saw kitchen workers licking their fingers, sticking their hands in customers' food, and never washing their hands. Today, the restaurant was closed for, among other violations, not installing 2 more hand-washing sinks, as they were ordered to do a week ago. And as we disclosed, conditions at Gladys's were not isolated. Other restaurants left food out for hours so dangerous bacteria might grow, attracting roaches that sometimes got in the food.
I was absolutely shocked to see what is going on at some of the restaurants in the city of Chicago.
So shocked, Schulter and Alderman Joseph Moore say they'll introduce new ordinances in the City Council tomorrow.
It's essentially a right-to-know issue. People have a right to know when they enter a restaurant that the food they're getting is safe and sanitary.
To let us know, the aldermen want the city code to require that inspection reports be posted by the door, like here in Atlanta.
Because there is no greater deterrent for a restaurant than they have an inspection report that indicates that there are vermin or roaches or other unsanitary conditions.
And both aldermen want a grading system similar to other cities, where restaurants get an A, B, or C based on their inspection scores.
If I were a restaurateur, I'd be very proud and I'd work very hard to make sure I got a big A to post in my front window.
And both also want to increase the number of restaurant inspectors, require food handlers to wear gloves, and increase the fines paid by repeat violators.
We're looking at quadrupling the fines that are now imposed today.
As we disclose, some restaurants have failed up to 16 inspections in recent years, been closed and reopened 4 times, and still the violations continue.
Restaurants are skating. They view the fines and they view the inspections as almost a joke.
Earlier, the mayor agreed his health department has to get tougher. Do you support a grading system that Los Angeles or New York?
I will look at the grading system. I have an open mind on the grading system, as well as, of course, increased fines. You can't fine them $50. I mean, this is ridiculous.
The mayor says he also wants team inspections of restaurants by inspectors from the city's building, health, and streets and sanitation departments. Hearings on all of the aldermen's proposals will be held after their ordinances are introduced tomorrow in the City Council. I'll keep you posted.
A 6-month-long News 2 Chicago investigation is sparking major changes today. City aldermen taking important steps to toughen up city health codes to make Chicago restaurants cleaner and safer. The response comes to Pam Zachman's undercover reports, Eat, Drink, and Be Wary. We found countless violations, workers sticking their fingers in customers' food, serving food that had already been on the floor, and in some cases, bugs in the food and in the kitchen. Not pleasant pictures to look at, but important ones for changing the health code. Aldermen now want a law that requires restaurants to post inspection results. They also want a law to increase fines for violators, and they want more inspectors in the health department. All those today. Pam Zachman is here now. A very busy and important day at City Hall. Pam.
Linda and Lester, it was a big day with some emotional responses from City Council aldermen who say they want to clean up restaurants so customers can be sure it's safe to eat. And they have a number of proposals on how to do it. The health department's restaurant inspection program is in for some big changes if the new laws introduced as a result of our investigation are passed.
I think your report brought out a very, very important point, and I think it hits home to a lot of people. People are eating out more and more. When they go to that restaurant, want to know that the food is being prepared in a healthy manner, that there are no roaches or vermin.
To help ensure that, Moore and Alderman Eugene Schulter introduced ordinances today that would increase the fines paid by repeat violators of the city health code, require them to undergo retraining as certified food managers, and require restaurants to post a grade based on their last inspection score or a copy of the inspection report
in a conspicuous spot.
We want to make sure they're legible and that the summary include all of the problems that they have had, so that when a consumer goes to those restaurants, they can then see at first glance what kind of violations the establishment has had.
In response to our reports, the mayor's budget director says 6 new inspectors will be added to the health department to make sure all restaurants get inspected at least twice a year. The mayor says he wants task force inspections inside and outside all restaurants.
We like to bring in a number of inspectors because if there's rats outside, there's going to be rats inside. There's rats in the basement, they're coming up. And so if the kitchen is not clean, they're having problems in there, they're going to be in the restaurant.
And the 42nd Ward alderman said they should get tougher on restaurants that don't correct the violations found.
There's nothing worse than eating a pizza and having the rats go over your feet as you're eating it. You get a tickling sensation.
The ordinances will all be considered before hearings to be held by the City Council Health Committee. And the aldermen say they'll have some tough questions for the health department. They want to know why restaurants weren't getting the inspections they should.
Topping our news at 10, it's a favorite among tourists, once known only for its deep dish pizza and graffiti decor, but lately known as a leader among health violators. In our series, Eat, Drink, and Be Wary, you saw the hidden camera video from our 6-month undercover investigation. Pam Zekman detailed the offenses: rats, roaches, and unsanitary conditions. Geno's has had its license suspended twice in the last year. Tonight, the health department suspended it again. And with Pam Zekman looking on, the restaurant's owner responded.
Don't you clean up your place once and for all?
The place is clean, it's super clean. I can show anybody in the world, nothing wrong with my place.
The inspector says no.
No, friend is a liar.
The inspector
Nothing is wrong. Anybody can come in.
It's a class theory.
Anybody and can check it, and everything is clean.
Not clean enough. The city slapped a license suspended sticker on the door for the 3rd time this year. Then Giuseppe and Sarah, the owner of Geno's, invited us in to show us the glue boards he's put down on the floor in the kitchen to trap rats, as the city requested, and the concrete walls he's built in the alleyway to keep rats out. Or you put up, what about the roaches?
Roaches gone. No roaches.
On Saturday, a customer seated in this booth got upset when he saw roaches and pointed them out to Insera and the inspector standing nearby.
The customer approached him and asked him if he was the owner. He said he was, that he was never going to eat here again because there was roaches in the dining room.
The inspector found the roaches were crawling out from gaps in the wood booth, now caulked. As we disclosed, Geno's customers have repeatedly complained about finding roaches baked in their pizza and in the Parmesan cheese at their table. Now the inspector says Insera can't reopen until he caulks every crevice in every booth. You wouldn't want roaches if you were in a restaurant coming on your table or in your pizza?
No, I don't want. Sorry. Sorry.
Insera says he's also ordered a new hood to go over his deep fryer to correct a fire hazard and will elevate food off the floor as the city requested. Why do you need the health department on your back all the time finding violations? Why don't you just keep it clean yourself?
That's what we're going to do. Now on, they're going to stay clean all the time.
Seeing is believing.
Long history here.
He has a history. And our commissioner, and I'm sure the mayor of the city of Chicago, does not want anybody with a history to be operating in the city of Chicago.
Insera says he hopes to have all the violations corrected by tomorrow, but before he can reopen, he'll have to be re-inspected once again. Pam Zekman, News 2, Chicago.
Today proved the city of Chicago is getting tough on delinquent restaurants after a 6-month News 2 Chicago investigation of unclean and unsafe practices. Today, for the 2nd time in 24 hours, the health department put up a sign warning the public that the license of Geno's on Rush is suspended. And once again, Pam Zekman was there.
I don't know.
What happened to the sign? You took it down.
No, me. I don't took it down.
The famous pizzeria's long history of health code violations was disclosed during Pam Zekman's investigation. Pam's here now with today's developments. Pam.
Lester and Linda, it's illegal for a restaurant to take down a license suspended sign because then the public has no way of knowing the restaurant has been closed by the Board of Health. And as we disclosed, Geno's has had plenty of experience getting closed. It's been shut down 4 times in recent years and cited repeatedly for a laundry list of serious health code violations. The city health department had plastered this sign on the door of Gino's on Rush, saying its license was suspended until the owner, Giuseppe Insera, finished correcting violations, and Insera promised he would.
Now on, they're going to stay clean all the time. We're taking care of everything. Everything's got to be taken care of.
Everything meant spending the night caulking cracks in the wood booths where a customer and a city inspector saw roaches last Saturday. And Insera promised that this time he'd keep the place clean for good. What's different this time?
We pay more attention. Whatever they want, we listen and follow whatever they want, and we cooperate the way they want.
The health department wanted him to keep this sign up until he got re-inspected. But this morning, when we stopped by, the sign was gone, confusing customers who came to the door. Then the health department dispatched another inspector to put the sign back up. But once again, Insera took down the sign and then claimed he didn't know where it was. It is against the law to take the license suspended sign down.
I understand, but I don't do it.
But a neighborhood resident who asked to remain anonymous saw him do it.
I saw him take it down. He literally ripped the sign down. As a matter of fact, he was looking around to make sure nobody was watching.
When the police came, Insera's son put the tattered sign back on the door, and I confronted him once again.
Mr. Insera, you said you didn't know who took the sign down, and your own staff came out and put it back up.
He's on. Okay.
That sign stays up on the door.
No problem.
Doesn't the law mean anything to you?
If it comes down again, I'm going to write you a ticket or have you arrested.
Listen,
the sign stays on the door.
Insera says he's ready for a re-inspection of the restaurant and expects to be open soon. But as of now, health department officials did not know when they'd be back to check out the restaurant.